Please allow your queer clients to be the complex, messy human beings that we all are, right? Don't expect them to, neatly fit into one particular box or anything like that.
LGBTQ plus individuals are disproportionately impacted by homelessness, and not every homeless response program is safe or welcoming for this population. Here are 5 steps to help make your program more welcoming.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Kylie Madhav. My pronouns are she and her. I'm currently based in New York City, and my role within SAGE is the Senior Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. While this is not universally true, there are, of course, shelters that are more affirming of queer people. Many shelters are resolutely not at all safe spaces for queer people. Not safe really for anyone, but particularly for queer people. And especially if we're talking about gender segregated shelters where staff might not recognize a person's gender and might kind of misgender intentionally. I think it's really important to not police people's gender in ways that many shelters do. Again, not all. There are some shelters here in New York City that are doing phenomenal work, like queer supportive, like affirmative work, but not policing gender is super important, right? So not saying, oh, well, your birth certificate might say this, or I think your birth certificate might say this, or I think you might identify this way, trying to superimpose one's assumptions of gender on somebody else is just, that is an inherently violent act, right? And so definitely something that's best to avoid. Also, if your question is like, how can people who are working within the system make their spaces more affirming, the way that we destigmatize other topics, in our social discourse is by being open about them and like being like, hey, like, it's so like some people are Black and that's okay. Some people are immigrants, that's okay. Some people are women and that's okay, right? Like we celebrate our differences. And I think that's a really important strategy that can also be used in the shelter spaces as well, right? So like making it obvious in like whatever ways that feel appropriate that this is meant to be an openly affirming space for everyone, including people in the queer community. Also as well, like even once you've done that and let's say that there are, people in your space, like in your shelter who might identify as gay or lesbian or bisexual, as I mentioned earlier, there are many, many differences in lived experiences between different members of the LGBTQ plus community. And not everyone experiences life the same way. Not everyone navigates the same challenges. And so just because a space is affirmative of like, for example, cis gay men or cis lesbian women does not mean that it's necessarily a trans affirming space. So, and in my experience, I have found that trans people are, I would argue, most at risk within the queer community of various sorts of like discrimination that one might experience. So it's really important that even if you think that your space is queer affirming and all of that, making sure it's explicitly trans affirming. I think like as a country, we have not yet reached the sort of like pervasive understanding that transphobia is not okay the way that I think we have gotten to as a country with respect to homophobia. Like I think that we've moved a lot on homophobia over the last 20 years, but transphobia, there's still a lot of just misinformation and hire people. Don't expect one person in your organization, for example, to do casework for every single trans person that might walk in the door, particularly if the employee happens to be a trans person. Please don't assume that because a person holds a certain identity that they can be, that they can essentially be the sole conduit for an entire community to an organization. That is not fair, and that's inherently patronizing. And we don't do that with all identities, so we shouldn't be doing it with any identities, right? The LGBTQ plus community is not a monolith, right? So, like I think there are various tropes that exist as pertaining to the community. Like we can all like name a few, I'm sure, but we have to like remember that just because a person holds a certain identity, it doesn't mean that we understand their experience. So when you're working with anyone, right, but especially with queer people, please don't assume that you know 100% like what their challenges are, like what their needs are. Please allow your queer clients to be the complex, messy human beings that we all are, right? Don't expect them to, neatly fit into one particular box or anything like that. Queer people are complex, multifaceted people like anybody else, and so each person is a world unto themselves. Is kind of how I see it.